experience, your first shot at changing a belief. Not as easy as it looks, eh? Are we on, by the way? Yeah, okay. The sorting process was challenging, yeah?
Yes.
Why do you suppose we don't have a technique for that? Why do you suppose we don't teach you how to do that? We've been teaching you that since day one in the Practitioner, right? All these different tools and skills that you've been learning is now putting all those together. And I couldn't give you a roadmap as to which one to use when and how. It's just like everyone who finishes Practitioner training goes, okay, now that we got all these techniques learned, which ones do we use when? Give me a specific map that says, when somebody says this, then I use that technique.
Never worked.
It doesn't exist.
Never worked.
It doesn't exist. The techniques came out of watching someone who is already masterful at something and trying to figure out a way to teach their mastery to people who didn't have it. So the techniques are not what's important again. What's important is the process that you go through and the knowledge that you gain by watching and listening and utilizing the skills that you've been developing. So that when you come to an experience like we were dealing with Ron, it becomes obvious that what we need to do is probably re-imprinting versus the submodality belief change based on the data that we were getting. Or that a person is so cognitive that what we need to do is the walking belief change to help bring them into their bodies more fully. Or that as we're trying to elicit the belief, what we're finding is a conflict exists, where two parts of a person is pulling in two different directions. And there still may be a belief that holds that conflict in place. So you still could do a belief change, or you could also choose to do a conflict integration and see if the belief changes as a result of that. So there is no clear roadmap. That's why when you get into the master level, you start discovering that what you're finding may be something else than what the technique is that you're trying to work on, which makes it more complex because you're trying to fit it into a specific technique. In Practitioner, we go, does anyone have a problem that looks like this? And we give you the structure of the problem, and you go, oh yeah, I have one like that. And you go, great. And then we do the technique that fits for that structure, right? That's not so true at mastery level. We go, find a belief to change and then change it. That sounds simple. But when you start working with a belief, you start discovering that there's so many other things going on. There's parts that are colluding and colliding. There are beliefs that are in conflict with each other. There are parts that are holding things in place in order to protect certain parts of us. Whether they're from childhood experiences or whether they're based on our religious beliefs. And we find that sometimes our subjective experience is in conflict with those principles. You know, our morals that we got as children through many avenues, through school, through church, through just what our parents or our family system said, how it's supposed to be. So you can see how interesting it is to begin to find who you are by uncovering all of that stuff, all of those things that have been sort of added to our individual personhood. And then to even begin to question whether it's okay to change those or not. You know? Is it okay to step outside of my upbringing, of my family system, of the beliefs that were formed through my religion? You know, and in many cases, the answer is no. So does that mean that the conflict remains? In some cases, yes. And in other cases, you have to work to find how a new belief could be congruent with a higher principle, a principle of faith or a principle of the family system and how it works, so that you can adapt to that system in a way where you can still find congruency and love and connection and whatever it is that you're seeking. That, to me, is the ultimate flexibility. Does that make sense? And, you know, it's sometimes not an easy road. I mean, when we get to this belief level stuff, we're dealing with very significant changes. Yeah, Paul.
I've been wondering if there's any sense or advantage in taking the same belief that we might have done with the submodality process and doing it with a re-imprinting and doing it with a walking belief change. Is there any advantage to that? Any kind of comments that you would want to put on something?
The advantage would be, to me, doing it if I didn't feel like I got the complete change from the previous pattern. If I felt like I really got the belief change, then I might not want to go back and try and do it again. If I feel like I've really gotten a shift and I want to find how that begins to integrate and change in my life, and then I discover that there's something else limiting about it, then I could go back and use another process. So to me, it's really about what level of change do I feel like I've already gotten from one process, and I don't really want to mess with it if I feel like it's just integrating now.
Yeah.
I'll let the integration take place and then see if there's anything residual that I should work on then. Any other comments? See, Henrik, you mentioned something to me. Oh, about submodality elicitation. It's important to get permission when you're eliciting from people, the permission to hold them to the information that you're asking for. So I know in my own private work that there's a lot of people that just enjoy telling you a lot of information. Maybe either it's that they enjoy it or they think that you need it. I'm not sure sometimes what it's motivated by, but sometimes I need to find out about that. Are you telling this to me because you have a need to share it, or because you think I need it? Because what I want you to be clear about is that I want you to share what you feel you need to share, and I will tell you what I need. Does that make sense? So that I become more of a real guide, a real director of the process, so that we're not wasting a lot of time with things that they think I need, that I don't. So, for example, in submodality elicitation, content is not important. It doesn't matter to me about what's in the picture, whether there are clouds or people walking or balls being thrown or whatever. What matters to me is the quality of the image. Where is it in your visual field? How far away is it? Is it panoramic? Is it a moving picture? Are you associated into it or dissociated? So when you do a submodality elicitation, you are the director. You ask for what you want. And you let them know that when they start to give you content, that it isn't necessary. Sometimes they want to share the information. But just be clear with them about its utility. Most people are used to giving content.
Spend hours and hours talking about content.
Exactly.
They just decide confused. Why these things not important?
Exactly.
Let me tell you, maybe you get something out of this.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
I go with the flow.
Yeah, so sometimes, I mean, most of us are not really familiar until somebody tells us that there's a difference between structure or process and content. That we as NLP practitioners are listening for structure, listening for process. That doesn't mean that we're not interested in the content. It's just that we're listening for something that's at a deeper level. We're listening for how it's set up, how it works for the person. So we become less attached to their story and more attached to the structure of the story so that we can find how the structure is limiting and therefore change it to something that's more useful.
Sometimes they think we are crazy because we are asking about submodality and answering them with submodality. Because when you ask about the quality of the teacher, they don't know what we're talking about.
Sometimes that's true, that people don't know what a submodality is or how to
Of course, we don't say
describe it.
Where kids, maybe location. And location, no, location is so difficult because they say it's here, sometimes it's here, sometimes I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
A lot of time, I don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
How you go with your clients in tuning to
To me, the question is, how do I work with somebody who is having, say, difficulty accessing their submodalities? Sometimes I just go the easy route and don't work with submodalities. Sometimes it requires a lot of framing, a lot of teaching the person how their submodalities work and what the structure is and all that first. And sometimes that's fruitful. Sometimes it's worth doing that. Say if the person is a very emotionally based person. It might be useful for them to really begin to explore how their emotions are connected with their internal imagery and sounds and so on, so they can begin to learn how that relationship exists. And that teaching them may be important just in and of itself. So therefore, it may be worth doing that. With somebody else who's really in touch with their internal experience and yet they're still having difficulty with some modalities, it might just be easier to go another route. Because we teach each of these things in multiple capacities. You know, the swish pattern is a submodality for changing a habit. 6-step reframing is not using submodalities to do the same thing. So you have multiple ways of making change. Read your client. Find out what's going to make it easiest for them. That's what I do, is I try and make it simple.
sometimes I think the clients need to be deeper at this one who hears the thing and notice they always tell us that they need
Most often they'll tell you, yeah. And sometimes when you don't detect that and you try to start in on something and it doesn't go, change it. You know? Yeah, a lot of times you can just change it. Right. You have to be flexible. So that's what I do with that. But it does require some effort to be a real active guide, because, as you've said, traditional therapies, in many ways, wait for the client to do the talking and do the revealing, and it's not as directive necessarily as what we do. Okay. All right. We have about 50 minutes left, and I think that's enough time to do the walking belief change pattern. Yeah. So let's set that up. Take somebody through it. And then you guys will all have the chance to work with this tomorrow, as well as re-imprinting tomorrow. So we'll do 2 patterns tomorrow. Okay, so the spaces are, actually, we'll just start in with somebody and I'll describe the spaces as we go. Who has a belief that they'd like to change? No, not again. Who has a belief that they got partway through? Do you have one, Georgie? Let's hear. Let's hear it first. I'm not creative enough. Great. All right, let's see where this takes us. Okay, so there'll be a meta space here, and there'll be a meta space at the end over there. And what that means is simply when you're not actually accessing one of these spaces, I'll ask you to step back here. Whenever we're just talking or conversing about something, trying to learn about something, we'll talk from this space. And then these spaces will be really about accessing that space specifically. So the current belief is something you're already aware of.
Yeah.
So state it again.
I'm not creative enough.
I'm not creative enough. And now step into what that experience is like. What's it like when you say those words internally? What does it feel like? What context does it live in? What are you aware of?
It's a mixed feeling here.
What else are you aware of? Visually? Anything auditorily?
The pictures are connected to the context. There are contexts where I would like to be more creative.
Okay, so the pictures you're imagining are specific to those contexts?
Yes.
Where you'd like to be more creative?
Yes.
Okay.
And there are internal voices as well. Something should be done and you are not doing that. Something like that.
Something
So-
should be done, you're not
and
doing
you're
it.
doing that. You're wasting time.
You're wasting time.
Internal dialogue.
Okay. And as you experience that, you feel
Yeah, it's a turmoil or something.
turmoil.
Here.
Okay, you can step back out. Okay. So that's the current belief space.
Yes.
Okay. This space, when you're ready, we'll first access a little bit over there and then we'll step into it, is anything in the world that you're aware of that you're open to doubting whether it's true or not. Okay? Where you would think, maybe it would be more useful not to believe that. You're open to doubting whether it's true or not. You might already believe it, but you're going, maybe I might not believe it. Okay? All right, so hold that for a second. So that's what that space is going to be. Okay? So you have a sense of what that is?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about it.
It's about past lives, so I don't know whether it's.
You have a
True or
sense
not.
of believing in that? You're open to doubt it, whether it's true or not?
Yeah, I'm open because I don't know whether it's true or not.
Okay. I'm just trying to make sure that it fits what we're... Do you already believe it or not?
No,
Do you lean towards believing it?
Yeah, maybe.
You lean towards believing it. Are you open to doubting that whether it's true or not?
Maybe not a good example. Not a good example.
Do you understand what we're going for here? something that you believe that you're beginning to go, I'm open to questioning whether that's true or not.
It can be as simple that I saw that someone was always telling the truth, and then I heard from someone that and maybe I questioned that maybe that person is not always telling the truth. Is it okay?
So you were believing that they were telling the truth, and then you started going, maybe not.
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Maybe
So I'm
not.
open to doubting whether they're
Yeah.
being truthful all the time.
Yeah.
So what's it like to begin to be open to doubting whether that's true?
Yeah, it's a picture, so two pictures. It's a clear one and it's a fuzzy one, and this is the maybe not.
Mm.
Yes.
Maybe it's not true.
Maybe it's not true. It doesn't have a very profound feeling. It's just maybe. Maybe
Okay.
not.
And feeling? What's your...
It's just kind of. I
Okay.
don't know. Maybe yes.
And you got some of that dialogue going on? I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
So
together.
you're looking
with
at the pictures and
Yeah.
you're kind of wondering.
Yeah,
And
it's fuzzy and it's. Maybe yes, maybe not.
great. Step back to meta. This next space is the Museum of Old Beliefs.
Oh yeah,
You got a lot of those, I bet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we all do. So what does your museum look like?
It's an old cupboard.
Uh-huh.
Very nice cupboard.
Uh-huh.
And the beliefs are written like the papyrus in the.
Yeah, and the rolls and the scrolls
And then
put in tubes and they're
Yeah.
stored. Very elaborate.
Mhm.
You've thought about this
Oh,
before.
oh, I have it.
Yeah. Not everyone knows exactly how their museum looks, but you've explored this before. Okay. So, can you tell me a couple of beliefs that are in there?
Oh,
that you
yes,
put away?
Santa Claus.
Santa Claus is in there.
I did believe
Can you think of another one? Like a childhood belief or one you changed last year in NLP?
I don't visit them very often.
Okay.
So,
Okay. You have the experience of storing them though, putting them away, and knowing that they're there. Okay. So step there. And just enter that space again. Just know what it's like to take a belief that you used to have and to put it away. Well, I'm not believing that anymore. I don't believe that anymore. Yeah.
They were useful.
They were useful at some time. Now you've changed. And now you can step back. So that sort of is the first segment. Taking the current belief into open to doubting whether it's true, and then having the experience of being ready and willing to put it away.
What did you ask her there in the museum?
Asked her
when
what,
she was there?
I asked her just what it was like to be in that space and to recognize the other beliefs that are there that she's put away. That there are many, many beliefs that have changed over the years. That they're all stored there if she ever wants to go back and look. But as she said from over there, she said, I don't really remember a lot of them anymore. They're not beliefs of mine, so I don't hold them in my consciousness anymore. I've put them away, so to speak. And so this is just sort of a metaphoric representation of where you've put them. That there is a storage facility somewhere in there where they are if you really wanted to recall them. Yeah? The next space we're going to be stepping into is the preferred belief.
What would I like to believe instead of the current one?
Yeah. So say that one again, just as a refresher.
I'm not enough
I'm not creative enough.
creative. Yes. I'm
In
not
certain
creative
contexts?
enough in certain contexts.
Certain
Yeah.
contexts. No, we're just restating the current so that we can sort of begin to elicit what she wants instead. What do you want instead?
I want to find and practice ways of enhancing my creativity.
Okay. Is that a belief?
It's a wish.
It's a wish, but it's about behavior, right?
Yeah, yeah. Because I didn't want to state that I want to be creative or I am, because I can't believe it. So if I say I am creative, it's hard.
So what if you made the belief more active?
I'm getting more creative.
I can become more creative in those
I can
contexts.
become more creative. Yes, that's it. If I yes, if I do this and that and that,
Is that enough? I mean, sometimes just saying, I am creative, goes, no, right?
I can become creative. I just don't want to have all these things to be done.
You don't want to have all those things to be done
Yeah, it takes time.
to become creative? There's a belief.
Another belief.
So I can easily become more creative in those contexts?
Wow, I like that. I like that, yeah.
Okay.
I can easily become creative. I can easily become creative.
More creative.
More.
Because you said I'm not creative enough.
I'm not
That
creative.
indicates that you
Yeah,
have some creativity.
Yeah, I was working on it.
And so now I can become more creative
I can become more
in those
creative.
contexts.
I can become.
Or I can easily become more creative in those contexts.
I like that and I can say that.
All we're doing is trying to find one that may be the one that's going to replace that. When you get down here the next time, it may be something different. But all we're doing is just exploring the possibility.
I can. I'm able.
I'm able.
Okay, I'm able to become more creative. That's it. I'm able to become more creative. Yeah.
You like that?
Yeah, I'm
Great.
able. Yeah, okay.
See how important it is
Yeah,
in
I'm
individuals'
able.
words?
Yeah.
Great. Step in and just become familiar with what that's like. That's the belief that you'd like to have.
I sense freedom of choices,
Mm.
and it's I wouldn't say easy, but it has a flow.
So you'd really like to believe that.
Oh yes.
Great. It's different than that space, isn't it? Quite different.
I can't remember what it was.
Okay, stand back. Great. Now, that one's similar to that one,
Yeah.
but it's in a different direction, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be the one I was telling you about.
Open to believing
Open
that
to
it's true.
believing that maybe past myself. Maybe it's true.
Yeah, maybe it's
I
true,
don't have any proofs, but
but maybe it is.
yeah, I don't know.
And you're open to believing that it's true.
And sometimes I have this deja vu experience.
So you're leaning towards believing that. You're open to believing that it's true. Yeah? Great. Step back out of that one. And the final space is something that you already hold as sacred. A belief that you value, that's a resource to you, that is deeply held. Sense of unity. Sense of unity with everything. What's the form of the belief? I am connected to everything, I am unified. You put words to it.
I can't put it into words.
It's for my benefit, really.
It's a feeling. It's a very. It's feeling of connectedness.
Feeling of connectedness with the universe. Your belief in that connection is sacred to you. You were gesturing before this sort of sense of congruence. Okay, so that's the first round. We've established the spaces now and what the anchors are for each space. Yeah? So each of them holds a subjective experience for her. Now it's a matter of taking your current belief and beginning to move it through. Okay? So I want to just have you remind yourself of that space. Tell me a little bit about what that was.
When someone
Telling the truth.
Yeah, telling the truth, and someone else did something else, and then I started to doubt that maybe the person is not right.
Great. Step into the current belief. I'm not creative enough in certain contexts. Become aware of what that's like. Okay. Before you step forward, I want you to begin to question this belief. In other words, begin to think, is it possible that this belief isn't true? Are you open to doubting it? Remember what it's like to be open to doubting something. Just as you were open to doubting whether that person was telling the truth or not. You had this experience up here, these visuals. And there were certain words that came out. Maybe yes, maybe not. And now think about that in the context of I'm not creative enough. Bring that into this space. Really let that settle in for a minute. Being open to doubting whether that's really true or not. Could it be possible that it's not true? That maybe you are creative enough.
Maybe not.
Are you open to believing that maybe it's not true? That maybe in those contexts you could become. That you could be able to be creative enough. Yeah? It's kind of just questioning whether there's a possibility of that. And really considering whether that belief has served you. If you're open to doubting that it's true. If you're getting ready to let it go. To leave it in the past. As a belief that may have once served you. but no longer does, that has limited you somehow. So now I'm going to ask again, how open to doubting that that's true are you?
Yeah, it's doubt.
Yeah?
So it might be possible. But still I don't believe it. It might be.
You don't believe what?
I don't believe because I don't have proof that I am creative.
Mm. Do you need the proof in order to disprove that one?
Maybe just one or two versions.
Okay. So you can begin to imagine that there are a possibility in the future. There's a possibility where you will find your creativity. And then it will be time to put that belief here, won't it? So you can imagine if there's that possibility that it may not be true, that you could put it away here. Now you just mentioned that there may be some future necessity in order to really put this away. You may have to have some experience in the future of being creative in those situations to really put this one away. So right now, okay, so you're putting it away already.
Oh yes, I did.
You put it away.
I did.
You sure?
I'm sure. It's there. It's marked.
Okay. You can have it back if you want. No.
No.
Okay. Let's step here then. Okay. Just checking in. What's the preferred belief now?
I'm able to become more creative.
Step into that space. Restate that. I'm able
to become more creative.
I'm able to become more creative.
I'm able to become more creative.
Can you imagine that there'd be any difficulty with this belief?
Difficulty that it won't accomplish or that I couldn't reach it?
Any possibilities where you object to having this belief? Any reason not to have it? I'm able to become more creative in these contexts.
I don't have any objection.
Great. So now step forward. Remember what it was like to be open to believing that past lives were possible, that that could be true. Begin to experience what that's like, to be open to believing that that's true. And bring this new belief into that space. You become open to believing that you, say it,
The choices I have is being creative.
that I'm able to become creative in these contexts. Are you open
And
to
it's
believing
so
that?
interesting that there are pictures coming that I was creative that way and that way and that way.
Mm.
But I didn't thought that I was creative.
So the old belief was blocking your ability to
To realize
notice
the
it,
ways
that you're
how
creative.
much I was creative in some contexts.
Ah. So now you're open to believing that maybe it is true, that you're able to become more and more and more creative in those contexts. Yeah? So when you're ready, take your time to begin to bring that belief into this space that you hold all your sacred beliefs, that you're able to become creative in those contexts. Notice that sense of congruency, of alignment, of connection. Begin to think about how holding this as a sacred belief will change your future experiences in those contexts. As you let that belief settle down more and more into your being, becoming more and more aware of that belief's presence. That's your ability to become creative in those contexts. And share with me a little bit about that future.
It's so interesting to that creativity was not such a big deal or something like that.
Mm.
I thought that it's not so important.
Ah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's not so important. So does something else emerge as important?
Just to be, or the way of
Mm.
being.
Just the way of being.
Oh, it's a relief.
Ah, the relief. So in feeling that relief and imagining those contexts where you used to believe something else, what might you find your experience to be like then and there?
I feel that it was okay. And
Was?
Was
Will be?
will be.
I'm not sure of your usage of the word was.
You asked how.
In the future, how might you experience those contexts where you used to believe something else? And now you believe.
Now I do believe that it was okay as it was, and it will be okay as it was.
I see. So you're realizing now that it really was okay the way that it was.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Was that expected?
No.
No. And how is it? Is it okay?
It's kind of relief. So.
Nice. Step back over here. And now step into what your current belief is now. What belief do you have now?
I'm able to be creative.
At all times.
At all times.
And what about that thing about it's not important? Is that there?
It's not important.
Yeah, you said over there that it wasn't as important as you thought it was.
Yeah, it's not important.
You just are.
Because I will find the ways to
Ah.
be creative.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you, Georgie.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So in some ways, the unexpected happens in these processes. And I think when that happens, it's an indication that something more happened and something richer happened when it's not so rote, it's not so just this is what I expect to change it to, and that's what it's going to be. You can tell that there's a lot more integration happening when there's some surprise.
Doctor, my first thought is about being creative.
Uh-huh.
I wanted more creative ways to attract more clients.
More creative ways to attract more
Yeah.
clients.
Some specific
Mhm.
features to be able
Mm-hmm.
to find more creative ways to
Mm-hmm.
attract clients.
Mm-hmm. And now when you think about that context,
I think I have those capabilities.
you have those capabilities. So the belief had been stopping you before
Yeah.
from realizing them.
Yes.
Nice. Georgie, can you comment on what felt important during the process? What felt like it was a turning point or a necessary piece along the way?
The most powerful piece was the sacred.
The sacred place.
To
That's-
take something like a small chunk that wasn't.
To take something that was much smaller in context into a very
Yeah.
significant place felt powerful.
Yes.
And it made it more significant in some way, the change. And at the same time, sort of more trivial, diminished how it had been.
Oh yes, diminished the importance of being creative.
Ah. Anything else that you noted along the way? Did you feel at all like in this space when you were open to doubt that it was more of a struggle there
So it
to
was
try and get
a
there?
little bit funny. A little bit alone.
But it was easy to take it there. Okay.
This one was,
The preferred belief?
yeah, to form it in a way, in a language that I could.
To form it in a language that felt congruent
yeah,
and
yeah,
Mhm.
that wasn't so.
right. To find the words that matched
Yes.
the experience that you wanted to have. And that was important. Any questions for Georgie?
We could see the difference.
See the difference.
Still say it now.
All right, now let's sort of debrief what just happened. Any observations that you specially noted that you'd like to ask about or comment on?
Yeah, I noticed that you often ask questions in the meta position. You ask certain questions in the meta position,
Mm-hmm.
and then you ask certain other questions in one of the other positions. And I was just wondering about how you
Did you make note of how they were different, or?
I think I've got an idea of it. Yes, I think if I recall correctly that what does it look like and feel like to you before you go into it? Something like that. Get a sense of that place before you go into it. And then when you're in it, what's it like?
Exactly.
It's the pre and then
Yeah, this space is preparing for that space, to get an idea of what it's going to be about, so that we have an ability to have an open dialogue about it. Before, I'm just really wanting to know her experience. I'm not wanting to dialogue about it anymore, to try and explain the space anymore. I want that done already. So try and explain the space, get a sense about what that space is, become sort of a little bit familiar with it over here. Then when you fully step into it, you can have the full permission to step in and really experience what it's like. And then my questions are much more about what your experience is here. And that's why it's so important to clarify from this space what it is. Especially with these two, because they're slightly different even though they're similar. right?
Yeah.
This is open to doubting whether something is true or not. That one's open to believing that something is true. So they're going in a different direction. This is an away from, right? Away from that. And that's a towards. Moving towards a belief. Right? I found that distinction important when I've used this process a lot. And at first, Georgie was using this space as just that these were similar or the same.
For the first time, one thinks the same.
Yeah, because it's a doubt space either way. It's sort of this space either way. But one's more that way and one's more moving away from that. My attention and awareness is in a different place. So here, my attention and awareness is moving away from that. Does that feel right? I'm not really feeling like I'm moving there yet. I'm feeling like I'm moving away from there. But here, in being open to believing, even though the space is there, I'm sort of experiencing this, being open to believing that this is true. So it's a more forward orientation.
And so all the preparation questions for this at the other end.
Right. So the first round is just clarifying each of the spaces so that they have a representation of this, a representation of that, a representation of this. Now, Georgie already had one of this because she's done this before. So if you're listening from somebody new, you can ask them, what might your museum look like? How might you store all the beliefs that you don't believe anymore? So they can begin to create some imagery around it, some experience of what that might be like. To me, it was surprising that she was really fully ready to put it away. I don't know if that was true for any of you. Because what I was experiencing in this space, which is why I asked you afterwards, what was happening here, it still felt like she wasn't quite ready to leave it. Like there had to be some proof first, whether it really could be not believed anymore. So that's why I did that little bit of sort of checking around that here. Are you really ready to put it away, or do you need some proof? No, I put it away. That's what she said. So she may have been more ready than I was picking up to put it away.
Yeah, it appeared to me that she was ready, once she recognized the new belief, she was ready to put it away somewhere, but when and how was the question. But
Right.
because she brightened up right away, as I noticed,
Mhm.
when she came up with her new belief.
So by doing that initial setup, the person can already begin unconsciously to be thinking about that when they're in this space. So I'm sort of commenting on what Paul was saying, that by having that preferred belief right there, because I worked on it right there, it already feels like I'm beginning to, like, if I put this away, I can have that.
That was my
That was your
feeling of
experience.
emptiness. When I closed the door, I felt that I'm missing something. I need to have something.
So then there's this
missing.
motivation to move.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I sort of held her back a little bit. Had her come here and go, now, what's the belief again? And it's different than that. And then, creating motivation, right? By holding them back. Really allowing each of these spaces to be fully realized, using my language, before stepping on to the next. Because this could appear like all I'm doing is, okay, I take the current belief and I put it into doubt, and then I put it away. What about all the space in between? You know, that's a very digital approach to this, right? To just take something and step into the other thing. Like the submodalities change, we do a little bit at a time, right? Change one submodality at a time. Begins to shift the experience a little by little. So that's kind of what you want to do here is, are you ready to begin to be open to doubting? Yeah, I'm ready to begin that process. And that can allow that step to occur. And then really letting this lock in. And then are you ready to begin to consider putting it away? Yeah, I'm ready to consider that. Okay. Here's where we're really going to consider putting it away. Okay, I'm going to put it away. And so on. Any more questions?
So if I could just
Yeah, Jim.
go over the
Oh, sorry.
Jim.
One of the things I wondered about when you were in there, the final round, was there was no evidence in the past. And I wondered, that's my sense is you were accessing the past and saying, I don't have any, how can I believe this if I've never been able to do it in the past? But when he asked you about, he made it future then, could there be evidence in the future? That's my sense as I was watching you. Then it was like, oh, yeah, I could. Is that, I don't know if that's what happened.
Yeah, that's happening. But I believe that there
There's a new possibility in
will
the
be
future,
lots of examples in
Yeah.
the future.
that are possible.
Yes.
Right.
So sometimes you rather than create a belief that's an absolute, like I am creative, you create one that creates possibility, that creates movement towards that, so that then the person can actually begin to move to prove the new belief, which may become eventually, I am creative, right?
Right,
But it may not be ready yet.
right.
You know, there's maybe
It's too
an,
big a step.
an incubation process before someone can actually believe that. Because as we know, some beliefs are formed by direct experience, right? So we have to allow that to be true. So if I can believe that I can become creative, that's a stepping stone towards believing it, that I am. Right? It's like, you know, if any of you have ever had studies with affirmations, you know, how to do an affirmation. A lot of us think that affirmations are simply stating a belief the way that we want it to be. I'm smart. Problem is, if I believe that I'm stupid and I use the affirmation I'm smart, every time I go, I'm smart, the part of me that says that I'm stupid goes, no, you're not. I'm smart. No, you're not. I'm smart. No, you're not. How effective is that affirmation going to be? It's like trying to, you know, yell at somebody some truth, right? And they're just not going to back down. So you can create a belief, I'm becoming smarter and smarter around these situations. Which the other part can't really negate that. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So that's the similar idea here. Create a belief that can create movement. That's why I said let's put it into an action form. Okay. Yes.
I just want to ask you, do you use this process in your practice?
Absolutely.
And you take your client around?
Absolutely.
Or what?
Yep, just did it last week actually. Yep.
Because I learned it from Robert Dilt, but I never used this.
I use it with people who tend to be more heady,
More heavy.
more in their minds. And I want to get them more in their physiology. So I get them to stand up and begin to experience their beliefs more robustly. And I even sometimes give them the assignment to take these home and to go through it again with themselves multiple times to really begin to lock in that belief. Because sometimes in one session we don't get it all done. You know, we don't get the belief change. Because there's hesitancies somewhere and so on. So I allow them to go home and kind of work themselves through it a little bit, find where the objections are, and then we can come back and complete it. Because sometimes these processes take longer than the hour that you have. Yeah. Okay, so we'll start with this tomorrow morning, and first thing I'll do a refresher of it so that everyone's really clear, and then we'll break into twos and do it. And then we should be done with that by the end of the morning at some point. Then we'll do re-imprinting, and if there's time, we'll add something else in at the end. Okay? So let's see, maybe I have a little closing story. A troubled man paid a visit to his rabbi. a wise and good old rabbi, as all rabbis try to be. "Rabbi," said he, wringing his hands, "I'm a failure. More than half the time I do not succeed in doing what I must do." "Oh," said the rabbi. "Please say something wise, Rabbi," said the man. After much pondering, the rabbi spoke as follows. "Ah, my son, I give you this wisdom. Go and look on page 930 of the New York Times Almanac for the year 1970, and you will find peace of mind, maybe." "Ah," said the man, and he went away and did that thing. Now this is what he found. The listing of the lifetime batting averages of all the greatest baseball players. Ty Cobb, the greatest slugger of them all, had a lifetime average of only .367. Even Babe Ruth didn't do so good. So the man went back to the rabbi and said in a questioning tone, "Ty Cobb, .367, that's it?" "Right," said the rabbi. "Ty Cobb, .367. He got a hit once out of every 3 times at bat. He didn't even bat .500. 500 meaning 50-50. So what can you expect already?" "Ah," said the man, who thought he was a wretched failure because only half the time he did not succeed at what he must do. Theology is amazing, and holy books abound. See you tomorrow morning.